Okay, so we talk about Hitler becoming Chancellor. There were many steps taken by Hitler, but yeah, he was very successful in doing that. So the first thing we talk about the Nazis and the World Economic Depression. In case you've seen this PowerPoint on a slideshow, forget about it, because this is more complex. I added heaps of stuff you need to know. That one was just a rough, short version. Okay, so World Depression, of course, that transformed the prospects of the Nazis quite dramatically, because World Depression was exactly what they needed, actually, in order to come to power. There has been many problems in Germany, and the most important one for the Weimar government was cutting the wages of people and cutting the benefits. Of course, Germany was a kind of a social state at that point. We know what are the benefits. Even in New Zealand society, we have that, which I think is great, because many people are not, they're not adapting very well to the society. They don't have a good chance in life, and you need to cater for these people. It's not normal to leave people behind just because they are not up to the maximum potential, okay? But in Germany at that point, imagine the entire picture with heaps of people, being affected by the depression. And so, of course, the government couldn't cope, and they have to start cutting wages, shortening the time of the day, the time for working, so the hours. This actually happened even during our last crisis with COVID. Many people were affected, probably some of your parents and many people in the country. They have to take a cut in the wage, like maybe, I don't know, 20% or something, which is significant, absolutely huge. And of course, they were not pleased. And then they have to cut their hours, and they have to go from, I don't know, 12 hours to 6 hours. Just in order to keep their job for a while. So in times of crisis, you have to kind of come up with these kind of things. And then obviously unemployment started to go up, and I'm going to give you some figures in the next slides. Very cool figures. You won't find this in the books. And obviously homelessness, which is sickening, but this is happening in societies when we have this kind of turbulence. And obviously with all these, here comes poverty, probably the most important of all, because when you are poor, you don't care too much about doctrines, you don't care too much about ideologies or any other things, but you are preoccupied by your state of poverty. So all these were really on a very big scale. Germany didn't see that before during the Weimar government, and of course not during the Kaiser, so life was pretty good in Germany. Comparing with, let's say, the Tsarist Empire under Russian Tsar, okay. Under that guys, Nicholas II, they have heaps of problems, and people were extremely poor. So communism actually, the big revolution, the Red Revolution, and everything that happened after brought prosperity and better life for people. So that's why maybe communism was so successful in Russia, extremely successful, probably the most successful country on the planet. Even better than China. And so, of course, coming back to Germany, there was a big, huge problem. And we know that there were two parties rising, and these were Nazis and the communists. And the voters started to change support for the parties, and they started to go up. You can see that in times of need, extremist parties are coming to power, and they are really prevalent and prominent, and the leaders are coming off, they show off, and they take votes. They should be very vocal, very upset, criticizing, you know, and doing all you have to do in a campaign to win. But the breakthrough point for the Nazis was in the general election in September 1930s. These are your stats, just to see the picture, the full picture. I just want to confirm with you that you can hear me.
Yeah, we can.
Good. Thank you, boys. So the effects of the Wall Street crash, the effects on paper and on, you know, in figures, because that's the most important effect. That's actually speaking the truth about what happened. So by 1929, Hitler and the Nazis were placed to benefit, obviously, from any disaster, and this was a huge disaster, probably worse than a localized disaster. They say, I don't know, a volcanic eruption or I don't know, an explosion or whatever, because this was affecting the entire society on all levels. Absolutely, the entire society was affected. Of course, not only in the, in this country, in Germany, but all over the world. But we actually focus on Germany and see how this contributed to the Nazis' rise in power. I know you know heaps of this stuff. I know you understand what I'm talking to you, and maybe this is kind of repetitive, but we need to fix this information. That's the way we have to do it in order to get the best of it. So between 29 and 32, the depression hit hard Germany, very hard actually. And in terms of unemployment, look at that in millions. If you'll be able to remember some of that, that would be fantastic in the exam. If not, that's okay. You just have to understand how the unemployment was rising. Remember, I always gave you this information about unemployment with 6 million unemployed people in 1933 when Hitler took power. In 1932, there were 5.6, raising very, very fast. So look at that. 1929, 1.4, and then 3 years later, tripled the number, more than tripled the number, which is quite a lot, okay? And then wages, 1913, they were 100%, and then 1929, 169, and that was because of the hyperinflation and everything else, and the traits of that hyperinflation. By that time, hyperinflation was finished, but still it was there, not hyper, but simple, okay? And then look at that, 1932, 113, so a drop in wages, quite significant drop from 169 to 113. It's quite a lot. And so more reasons for Germans to be extremely unhappy and for the Weimar government to become extremely unpopular. Then government income, which is very important, especially in a social state, was, look at that, dropping from 9 to 6.6. Again, these are indicators, so it's not a number in millions or billions or whatever. Indicators, government income is in percentage, 9% to 6.6. And then government expenditure on welfare service from 102 to 106. And I guess this is a number, and that's going up. That's the only thing you need to know. Very important that that's going up. And of course, look at that, government income going down, government expenditure on welfare going up. Welfare will be what? Will be pensions, will be all sorts of help for unemployment benefit and stuff like that. So quite lots of trouble for Germany, lots of trouble. Now, what was the immediate effect, the short-term effect, as I call it, the Nazis and World Economic Depression? So what was the immediate effect of this economic depression to Nazi Germany? Two people, because that's the most important factor. No one could afford to buy any goods, food, or whatever, whatever you need, part of life. Unemployment rising, but unemployment was cut, so it's a very clear effect. So when you talk about Nazis' ascension to power, rise to power, we have to actually take into account all these factors. Of course, people were extremely unhappy, and of course, people were ready for a change. And of course, Hitler was elected, promising in a very populist manner, promising heaps of stuff that he couldn't do actually. And all these elements in here, the problems with unemployment, the problems with payments, wages, cutting wages and all this stuff, the unaffordability to buy goods, all these doubled by the economic depression, they caused major disagreement in the political world and absolutely the fall of the government of Germany. So government expenditure on welfare services increased a little bit. Its income fell by 1/3, as we've seen in the table. And by 1933, sorry, it's not boo, it's by 1933, Germany appeared bankrupt. So look at that, quite a dramatic turn of events for Germany in a moment when we believed that Germany was going to be okay. Okay, so that was it. I think that this was the moment when everyone realized that the Nazis or the communists will come to power. They were absolutely, totally like water and oil, different, completely different, with completely different vision towards what's going to happen. Obviously, the Nazis wanted to have a stronger, conservative Germany. The communists wanted to align Germany to the trend of many other countries becoming communists. And they wanted to spread communism because communists are not inoffensive. They are always, looking for this expansion of communism. It's in the rules of a communist party or of a communist country to look for expansion. And so the doctrine is not so peaceful as it looks like. Of course, increasing number of votes, unemployment stood at more than 2 million at some point, and the Nazis polled over 6 million votes. Of course, this can suggest that heaps of people who were unemployed received, gave their vote to the Nazis. And of course, not because they were, only because they were unhappy. It's because of the populist promises of Hitler and his party. So he was smart enough to promise whatever people wanted to hear. So that's the definition of a populist government. You promise whatever you can, and when it comes to deliver, it's a different story. So, of course, by polling 6 million people, 6 million new votes, they become the second largest party in the Reichstag, in the parliament, and they were very, very close to the Social Democrats, which was unheard of. And obviously the communists were the third largest party. If you look into this way, the extremists, which will be communists and Nazis, they actually they were in a much better position than the Social Democrats. So again, the extremism was huge, and that was what we call in Cambridge the age of extremism. It's not only Nazis and the communists in Germany, but there were heaps of other people and parties going in that direction, especially in fascist states. Think Mussolini's Italy, think Franco's Spain, and so on. Many other countries, even in Western democracies, let's call them this way, even in there, you will see problems. And parties like, I don't know, like Liberal Democrats nowadays in Britain, getting more votes, becoming more prominent, and so on. So between the elections of May 28 and July 32, the percentage of votes cast, not cats. Sorry for my mistakes, but I wanted to do a lot of modifications in here. So cast for the Nazi Party, look at that, rose from 2.6% to 37.4%. Look at that, from 2% to 37% raise in votes, and quite dramatic, I would say. That's a huge one. I mean, I don't even know how to calculate, but that's huge. It's like at least 15 times more. Dramatic increase, and with it was obvious in a way. I mean, you will know that will happen. Look at the general election results. So we'll take a break from writing. The percentages of the Nazis and the communists. So we have three different ways. I hope you can see my mouse. Can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So in the first part in here, 1930 September, Nazis were in around 17 to 18%, and then it was a huge leap forward from 18 to 37%, 37.4. Communists, look at the constant trend of going up. Obviously, very worrying for the Germans. Look at that. Communists and Nazis together, just add this together, 37 plus almost 15, that will be very, very close, if not even over 50%, 52%. So that will be quite a lot. More than half of Germany was on the verge to vote for an extremist party, which was a very worrying sight. Okay, a good news for democracy and the other countries in the world was that the Nazis actually didn't gain more prominence. There was not a crushing victory for them. They went from 37 in 32. In 6 months, they lost approximately 5%, something like that, less than 5%, which was a good sign, encouraging sign, but not good enough. So they will not lose more than that. Quite a potentially distressing table in here for a normal people living in Germany. Now, the weakness of the government. That's the thing I added, an extra thing, okay? I would say that none of the three governments was able to rule with the majority in the Reichstag. You've seen the numbers. These governments in between March and January, there were so many elections that you can get lost easily in these elections. You need to know just that the Nazis were very small, insignificant. They went to the top, a huge amount of votes, and then they started a small kind of insignificant decline. So it was a little bit going down when they took power. So that's what you have to remember. And also you have to remember that the communists were extremely strong. And the other parties were in big trouble. That's what you have to remember. Sometimes they give you this kind of questions. There are questions related to elections. They are very unfortunate for you because you will have to come up with some data, and so you have to remember some of these. If there is no need for that, you will know that, generally speaking, the Nazis rise. The numbers, they were quite good, impressive, and then they started to decline a little bit, which was evident. And the communists also. Communists, though, they were a steady, fast pace towards the top, so they never declined. They were always going up. Okay, so the trend was for the communists to go up, and actually at some point to pass the Nazis and become the most important party. So Hitler exploited very well this thing, because Germans, they were afraid of communism. There was a lot of kind of anxiety when they were talking about communism. So coming back to the lesson, none of the three governments, they were, look at that, in this period of time, less than 1 year, there were three governments, Brüning, von Papen, and Schleicher. They were not able to rule with a majority in the Reichstag. If you don't have a majority in the parliament, you cannot pass the laws you promise to the people to vote you, and then you lose votes. So it's very simple. Even in in a dictatorship, even there, you have to provide something to the people. You cannot just lie non-stop. And of course, President Hindenburg had to use his powers, and of course they were under the Weimar Constitution. He didn't actually ask to rule by decree. That was there as an option, but he used it very happily. So that doesn't mean that he didn't like it. Hindenburg was quite a conservative man. He was not far away from Hitler's views, not far away. He was a decorated war veteran, and he was really an important figure in Germany. He was very respected, but he was not far away from Hitler's ideas, and he was quite conservative. So he ruled by decree because he was forced to do that. Parties won't come up with, agreement. So then if they did not agree about how to tax workers or how to tax employers or how to pay the unemployed, then he will have to actually decide and take action. Some of the parties argued that Germany should stay state, kind of social welfare state. Some of them, they decided, they said that they couldn't afford that because Germany was too weak. And in 1930, Brüning called an election. This was the beginning of the end for everyone else, because there were big gains for the Nazis and the communists. And because of these gains, the Reichstag was even more unmanageable. I'm not sure if this is a word, but I just to put it there because it sounds good. It's a long one and I like it. Unmanageable. So Germany was really unmanageable because the Reichstag was in that state of disarray with so many different parties and so many different ideas and so many different views about what they have to do for the future. So this PowerPoint will be there, obviously, after I finish it. It's not finished yet. It's a work in progress. This part is very important. You'll have to understand this and, be very careful with this part because it's in all you'll have to talk about this period of ascension to power, rise to power. There will be questions in the different papers and in all of them. So it's very important. Okay, so 2 exams out of 3 will have this, and you'll need to know this part, which is not difficult. Do you find this difficult, boys? Okay, you are too focused to answer. That's okay. Don't worry. So, President Hindenburg Choices. He preferred to rule by decree, that's clearly, rather than allowing the communists or the Nazis into power. He was very against that. He didn't like Nazis, he didn't like the communists. From this point of view, he was good for Germany because he was the element of stability. He refused even Hitler's demand to make him Chancellor, because the president will appoint the Chancellor. So that was in his, pencil or whatever. So Hindenburg was really an interesting character. Now, I can tell you a few things because we don't want to just write and stuff. So I can tell you a few things about how these things happened. Now, von Papen lost some of the support. He was the Chancellor, Franz von Papen. He was an old friend of Hindenburg. After the Reichstag elections in 1932, the Nazis were the largest party. They have 230 seats, so quite a big number. But they were not in majority, so they couldn't form a government, which is very difficult. You are the biggest party, but you cannot form a government, which is a little bit, distressful for your leader. So Hitler demanded this post as a chancellor from the president, who was this old hero and father figure in Germany. Hindenburg was very suspicious of Hitler, obviously, and he refused. He said, nah, no way, Jose, I'm not going to give you that. He allowed the current chancellor, so this was the current chancellor, Franz von Papen, to carry on as chancellor, and he used these emergency powers to pass the measures that von Papen had hoped to solve the unemployment. That was the biggest problem in von Papen's book, okay, to solve the unemployment. Von Papen was very soon in trouble because he had virtually no support in the Reichstag, and so he called another election, this election, the election in November 1932. The Nazis were still in power, the largest party, but they lost this a little bit of a percentage, like that 5% I was telling you about. Hitler actually was going into panicking mode, and he regarded the election as a disaster for Nazis. And he said, look, we have to do something as soon as possible because we are losing the electoral power and we're losing our people, the voters, okay? So he had lost more than 2 million votes. And also he lost from the 230 seats, he lost 38 seats. So he went from 200 into a 100 area. And the sign was that that the Hitler flood tide has finally turned. The Nazis started to run out of funds. They didn't have enough money. So Hitler was at some point, that's a reality. At some point, he threatened that he will commit suicide. So he was in a very overexcited state. Hitler. Okay, Hindenburg again refused Hitler to be appointed as chancellor, and then in December 32, he chose Kurt von Schleicher, which was another important prominent politician at that period from another party. And this was kind of like the beginning of the end, because von Schleicher was a rival, a big rival for von Papen. And there was, you know, when you have two rivals fighting for power, Schleicher and von Papen, then who will win, boys? It's quite obvious. There will be Hitler. And so von Papen remained as an advisor to President Hindenburg. That's the long story short, okay? And within a month, von Schleicher was forced to resign because of the problems, accumulating problems, quite a huge pressure. I mean, it was inevitable that something big should happen to fix all this, okay? And so now Hindenburg had already sent the democracy to the rubbish bin of history by ruling by decree, and also he needed someone strong, and he needed someone to have support in the Reichstag as a chancellor. And obviously through January 1933, Hindenburg and von Papen meet secretly with some industrialists. We'll talk about this a little bit later when we'll resume writing. Army leaders, politicians, and they discussed. And then the big surprise came on 30th of January 1933, when Hindenburg appointed Hitler as the chancellor. And of course, we don't want to anticipate, we're going to go to that moment. We are still on this period of time, but this was the story of how things happened in that period of time. I need a little bit of feedback from you. What do you think about all this stuff? And then we can go back to the lesson. I can see that I have Mackenzie too in here. What do you reckon, boys, about the entire situation? So what do you think? My question is, do you think that it was inevitable for Hitler to come to power? And I have another question, which is more like, I want to provoke you. Why not communists? Why Nazis? Communists were rising in power. If you can write in your section in here a few words, or if you can talk to me, that's even better. So what do you think? Anyone?
Sure.
Yes, Liam.
I think either the Nazis, quite a status, and I think some sort of radical power would come to power.
Would you talk a little bit more in the microphone, because it's like it's stopping a little bit. I couldn't hear exactly.
Let me switch.
Yeah. So anyone else, boys? Any ideas? What do you think about this? Shay, what do you think?
I don't know, sir. I think Hitler's just exploiting, or he's playing on the emotions of the German people, and the reason he's probably seeming like a more like to all the, because the Germans are looking for like someone to take leadership and stuff.
Yes.
He's a German. He's probably kind of seeming like the better person to take power, just from a patriotism point of view, and that's probably why the communists aren't getting it, because he's promising more for Germany, whereas the communists are more promising to like expand their like communist rule. Yes, and exactly, very, very good point. Communists were promising, obviously, that they're going to be part of an international socialist movement, which will move things forward if they come to power. Excellent point in there. Excellent point, Shay.
Liam, any? Let's see if we are lucky now this time.
All right, does this sound a bit better?
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of it's more like a communist connection in there, isn't it? A communist internet connection.
Means it's decent.
That's okay, Liam. I will have your opinion in writing, maybe a few words. It's okay. I can still not hear you perfectly. Matthew, any idea? What do you think?
No, I'm not
Yeah,
really sure.
You're not really sure, but what do you think the time was right for Hitler to be actually presented as the new chancellor? What do you think? Because the other people, they were, I mean, the answer is a little bit implied because the other people were there and they failed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's normal in a way that, I mean, you use all the politicians you know. So you use von Papen, you use Schleicher, you use all these people, Bruning and so on, and they failed. And then you have kind of a good politician in there. I mean, a very patriotic, as Shay said, and quite promising lots of things. And at some point you say, oh, whatever, let's see what you can do. And actually, boys, Hitler was appointed by Hindenburg because behind the back doors, Hindenburg and von Papen, they discussed and they actually decided they are very annoyed by this guy, Hitler, who didn't want actually to go to power, you know, just in a small position as a minister or something. He wanted the big one, the big deal, you know. And why? Because he was very conscious of his position. His position was very good. The party with the most of the votes. Look at what happened in our elections. The Labour Party didn't win the election. They didn't win the election. They were just the first party. I mean, they won the election, but in some other elections, they had less than 50%. And then you have to actually ally yourself with other people. But if you are the first party on the counting, of course, you are the most important. And a good president or whatever, someone else should actually give them the power to try to form the government. Anyway, we're going back. Thank you, boys. So we're going back to this and continue. Hitler's tactics. This is the interesting part of the lesson. And Hitler's tactics were really, really interesting. So first of all, he tried to gain the support, and he actually gained the support of the industrialists. We will talk about this a little bit later. And then the Sturmabteilung was founded. Who will remind me what's Sturmabteilung, boys?
It's the SA.
The SA, exactly. Well done, Liam. So the SA, Sturmabteilung, a very interesting organization, let's put it this way. And very useful for Hitler. We're gonna talk about this a little bit later. Hitler himself was important for the Nazi success. Why? Because he was himself a good weapon of propaganda, okay? A very good speaker and quite an interesting character at that point in time. A guy with many ideas, and I will suggest you to watch that video. If not, I'm going to give you the link tomorrow, probably on YouTube, to watch the video, the entire film. You can watch that with your family. It's a very, very interesting film on YouTube. And you can comment, and then you can send me some of your comments. We won't have enough time to watch that alone. Maybe just if we take one period off, and it's a long film, but it's very, very interesting. So he gained the support of these people, and he used the propaganda. The use of propaganda was massive, and I should say that the Nazis were concentrated, focused on Bavaria in that region, because that was the stronghold of their party, and that was the heart of Germany. Okay, Bavaria, each country will have very important place. Okay, I won't give you the Albanian example now. I will leave it apart. I will give you example of other countries, like for example, my country, Transylvania is the heart of Romania. Okay, and that's why that was so contested, and that's why the Treaty of Trianon, from Romanian perspective, made the right decision, and Transylvania was returned to Romania from the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, from the Hungarian domination. And so other countries, they have the same thing, okay, traditional areas. If you think of a traditional area in New Zealand, that would be probably Canterbury, which is a very conservative region and a very stronghold of true green New Zealanders. Okay, let's call it this way, though it's not really politically correct. But if you look at the, just look at the teams, the rugby teams in Super Rugby Aotearoa, the more conservative and the best and the strongest team will be Crusaders, though they lost the last game, which was amazing to see. Now, coming back to Hitler, he gained the support of the industrialists. This will be some people like Alfred Hugenberg or Fritz Thyssen. In the photo, you can see Alfred Hugenberg. Some of these people were extremely annoyed by the Young Plan. And of course, they come up with this idea that Germany should be, again, a very conservative country. In a conservative country, they will be, they will thrive. Okay, their businesses will thrive. And obviously, most of the financial support for all the future endeavors of the Nazi Party will come from these people. And I will give you an example with this guy, Alfred Hugenberg. You can see him in the photo. He was literally a German. He was a German businessman and politician, obviously, and he was a nationalist. He was instrumental, actually, in helping Hitler to become Chancellor of Germany, and he served in his first cabinet. So look at that. I'm not helping you just for fun. I'm helping you to get something, because that's an industrialist. He's a capitalist per se. I'm not saying that you know, that it is a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying it. Okay, you will hear my sarcasm in there. He didn't have much of political influence or something like that. What was important for him was that he was a nationalist, and he was involved in the National Liberal Party. He shifted to the right. He was on the left side before the World War I, and then during the war, he shifted violently towards the right. When you will watch that movie, you will see that Hitler was extremely aggressive to the right when he started to become prominent in the Nazi Party in the years after First World War. He was elected to the Reichstag, this guy Hindenburg, in the 1920 election. So he had some political ambitions, okay? And he founded a newspaper. Whoever will found a newspaper will have money enough to influence. A newspaper is not a newspaper to send out the news. A newspaper is a very good instrument, a tool to create propaganda to achieve a target. There's no way for an industrialist to buy a newspaper and say, look, I'm gonna have my own newspaper, and they will write a glorious article about me, and I'm gonna read the sport news each morning on the coffee. No way. They want to use it for a profit. Okay, so these people are set to get money, to become wealthy, to dominate. Okay, and so he had all sorts of social Darwinist stance, and he's like, which means what? Who can tell me what will be a social Darwinist? stance. Okay, let's see.
So like the
Was that?
so sorry.
Yes, that's the one. Oh my God, Liam, perfect. So it's the survival of the fittest. That's life principle, you know, kind of development. He was vehemently against Marxism. Um, it was a kind of a soup of ideas in his brain. You cannot make something of this guy. He was a monarchist, so in this one you can see the kind of like conservative part, and of course why he actually supported Hitler, because he was a monarchist and he was a kind of a guy who supported the right wing, the conservative part of Germany. So I don't think we have to talk too much about this, but just, you know, to tell you that he played a significant role, Hindenburg, in Hitler's rise to power. And the same with Fritz Thyssen, same story. So, but there's no point to discuss about that because I don't want you to get too much information. That's more university level information. Okay. So we'll stick to this information. If you can remember his name, maybe by remembering what I told you now, Hindenburg. Sometimes it's called Hindenburg or Hindenburg. I think it's Hindenburg. I double checked when I've done this. But yeah, he was quite a big support in terms of financial support, because there was not enough for Hitler to inspire people and to, you know, call them, let's do this, let's do that. It was not enough. You need money to create things. Okay, so to buy guns, to buy ammunition, no one will give you that for free in a normal society. So we come to our friends, Sturmabteilung, the SA, which was an organization that gave invaluable support for Hitler. It was really the quintessence of his strong stance in terms of militarism and controlling by power. It was a kind of, Hitler was a kind of, if I can say this, kind of a Stalinistic regime, okay? Because Stalin was controlling everything by force, by power, by squashing, by destroying his enemies. That was the main political idea of Stalinism, okay? Not kind of ideology or doctrine or something. He didn't even know how to articulate this. Stalinism is a very interesting form of dictatorship, a very, very, very strong one. Okay, so the same Sturmabteilung, a very interesting organization. In the beginning, when they were founded, they provided, let's say, over 100 martyrs. Okay, martyrs to the cause, and they focused the attention. That was very, very smart from these people to focus the attention against the communists. They didn't want to, you know, talk about themselves or their policies. You always look for the scapegoat. You always look for someone to blame. You always look for somehow to channelize all the public hate and everything towards your enemies. Okay. And to find, I mean, without the communists, Nazis wouldn't have so much of power. Imagine Nazis being in an election and not having the communists and the Jews to blame for. So just Nazis with their ideas being in an election. That will be pretty boring, because yeah, you'll say things, yeah, make Germany great again, yeah, let's do that and that, but it won't be the same thing. Now, when you come up with the big, huge problem, the Nazis and the Jews are coming to take over and they are exploiting and they are doing, then people are inflamed, then people are following you, then people are voting for you, and so on. So very smart from the Sturmabteilung to focus the attention against the communists. And obviously, one important part in here was that they have this kind of disciplined militarism style. Discipline was everything, and discipline attracted the German people. Why? Because everything else was in disarray around this country. One of you wants to tell me something? No? Good. Let's mute Mr. Liam. Good man. Okay. And well, continue. So, you see, this is dictatorship, Liam, to mute you. Look at that. Of course, you can tell, and you can say something if you want to. No one can mute you people. Okay, now let's continue. Hitler was extremely important for the Nazi success, and you know that. I don't have to say it. We have to remember to write this, and one important element I found in this is absolutely cool, and we can discuss a little bit about this when we come back to school, this campaign, but we're going to go there. He refused to cooperate with any other party. Remember this, because this is very important. Unless he was given this chancellorship, the office, okay, and the power to rule without the Reichstag. He was very conscious that he didn't have the majority in the Reichstag, and he will never ally himself with the communists. So, but he also wanted to benefit from this rising power. And in a way, if you look, if you don't know that he was Hitler and he did so much wrong, and if you don't know that Nazis were Nazis and they were so toxic for Germans, for the entire world, in a way it was normal to receive this chance, because he was the leader of the largest party, and that largest party had a huge overwhelming vote in terms of numbers. So in a way, in a political way, this was normal for him to try to become chancellor and eventually to actually be appointed as a chancellor, because he was the leader of the largest party. Now, this is the nice part and important part. He used the latest technology, and this was with the help of his very, very good friend. Tell me his name.
Joseph
Goebbels. Excellent. Thank you very much. And they used very modern technology. Something like nowadays they will have laser shows and planes going with his posters and stuff like that. So this was the first aerial political campaign on the planet as we know it, okay? And this was called Hitler über Deutschland, which is the Führer over Germany. Very interesting concept. And this was in the 1932 campaign. Quite interesting. This is the poster of that campaign, and look at that. You can see swastika everywhere around here, and especially in the Bavaria, in this region, in this part of the Germany. Interesting how Hitler actually used all these elements of modern nowadays campaign, okay, electoral campaign. An electoral campaign will take over for like months, okay. In our country, it's few months, but if you look into the Americans, they kind of like start 1 year before the elections, the campaign and everything, and the elections, internal elections, and all that stuff. And Hitler was, remember the year we are talking about is 1932, 1933. quite back in time. Okay, so very soon we'll have we'll reach 100 years from that moment. So to think that they use loudspeakers, slideshows, films, and aerial political campaign, that's quite a progressive way. Okay, now we come back to our wonderful friend. Obviously, we'll have a lesson which I suspect you will love and you'll like a lot. It's about early Nazi leaders, and we'll discuss 5 of them. Things about their life and things about how they come to close to Hitler and how they were kind of like pushed in the front by the system, by the Nazi system. But that's going to be like in next week probably. So let's stick with this over the next 18 months. The economy continued to go down, obviously deteriorate, and the Nazis used any opportunity to attack the coalition, like you do when you are a dominant party and you are not in power. The propaganda machine was constructed, was created and perfected by, and obviously he was the leader, Joseph Goebbels. In German will sound like Joseph Goebbels. Let's keep the historical truth here. Joseph Goebbels. He was working at full capacity, this machinery, and the party message was spread by thousands of posters and pamphlets. And obviously, in that point in time, they used this kind of pamphlets, small pamphlets, leaflets, like half of an A4, which is an A5, printed on a machine quickly with main ideas. It was like more like 4 marks questions for you, 4 bullet points. What do we want? We are the Nazis. We want this and that and that and that. Vote for us. Okay? And we're going to give you strength. We're going to give you Germany back again. We're going to give you your pride and all that stuff that comes with this. I forgot to tell you about the Sturmabteilung when we talk about that. By 1930, the Sturmabteilung was a very huge army of young people, young men, ex-soldiers, and so on. But young people were the base of that. Hitlerjugend, they started later on trying to replicate this. The leader was Ernest Röhm, obviously. There is a long story about Ernest Röhm. We'll talk about that when we go to the night of the long knives, which is a very, very cool event in which Ernest Röhm lost his life, obviously, killed by Hitler. Led by Ernest Röhm, this Sturmabteilung, the stormtroopers, they will have brown shirts. There is a documentary, a short documentary with one of the ex-Sturmabteilung, an interview telling the audience how he felt when he received his first brown shirt, how proud of that he was. It was in a way like the moment I received my red tie when I became a pioneer. I was very excited because that was the norm. You will become a pioneer when you will reach year 3 or 4. I was 11 or 12, something like that. And I was made a pioneer, which was a step forward in my communist career. Okay, so there was no other option. You will have to do that. And I was very excited. And the red tie was amazing. And I used to have a very kind of like a very nice red tie, and it was an honor to wear that and to have that like in a very good condition, perfect condition, you know. Anyway, same with these people, brown shirts, and obviously they will receive meals, and sometimes they will receive accommodation in hostels and stuff like that. They distributed the leaflets, so they were doing this kind of propaganda, okay, and all sorts of meetings, and they tried to destroy the communists. So coming back to Goebbels, these people already faithful to the party were invited to attend torch-lit parades and mass rallies. I think you remember this from the videos. You've seen the torch-lit parades. There was such a show-off from the Nazis, and with an impressive effect on people, okay? The Nazis were the masters of spectacle and technology, so they wanted to kind of, perfect that, because they knew that this will work towards their interest. So Goebbels was a very interesting character. We're going to talk about this guy a little bit later. Now, we are close to the end of this lesson, boys, so we're going to stay more like 5 to 10 minutes just to finish this. We'll continue tomorrow. What I want to say is, like, during the 32 presidential election, Hitler stood against Hindenburg, and the Nazi leader was flown by airplane from one speaking venue to the next one. And as I said, I think I told you in the classroom, he visited 5 cities per day. So Hitler was really, exploited, okay, for the benefit of the Nazis. He was shown all over the place, 5 visits per day, quite a lot. So using the airplanes was quite interesting. This Führer over Germany. Interesting. Hitler über Deutschland, a very, very cool campaign. Using the plane was quite a significant idea of Goebbels. He was such a smart guy with doctoral studies and everything, such a smart guy, serving such a wrong cause. Very often in history, you can find people on this caliber doing absolutely wrong stuff. The depression boosted the fortunes of the communists, who argued that the roots of the problem is the capitalist system. Obviously, they will argue that. I would say that probably with some success, and probably with some, there was some truth in there, but because if you think of the Wall Street crash, Wall Street was dominated by the capitalist system, and Wall Street happened because of the greed and because of an overinflated bubble of the Americans wanting to double, triple, quadruple their profits and without covering. If you know a little bit about Wall Street crash, you will know that heaps of people went into speculations, financial speculation on the markets, which is always very dangerous, because it's mostly buying and selling, paper money, something like that. So money that they don't exist, and it was really bad. And this was happening under a capitalist regime. So it's fair to say for the communists that part of the thing, of course, they blame it all on the capitalist system, but it's fair to say, to have this observation, that maybe part of the problem of this huge crisis, which was the largest financial crisis on planet ever, part of that was due to the flaws maybe of the capitalist system. I'm not saying it was completely because of that, but I'm saying that that has something to do with that. So Nazis portrayed themselves as the defender of the actual system, and they, of course, attacked the capitalist system. So they didn't like capitalists, they didn't like communists, they liked only the German nationalist system. So they were really not lefties or righties, they were for Germany, okay? So, and of course, they blamed the communists. So it was a blame of you did that, no, you did that, and so on. And obviously, they said about communists, they are scheming revolutions together with the Jews, who will be obviously attacking the financial heart of fatherland. And of course, wealthy industrialists began putting some money in the Nazi party coffers because they wanted to prevent the communists to take power. Why? Why industrialists will want to prevent the communists from taking power? Who can tell me, boys? Why do you think? Yeah. Yes, Shay.
Oh, because in communism, all the money to the state and all the
Yes.
by the state, so that the industrialists lose all their money.
Excellent. So obviously, because the communists are taking over your businesses, there are no businesses controlled by private people in communism. Of course, you will argue that in China, they have that now. China is not really communism. China is not really capitalism. China is China. Okay, it's a Chinese, party. Anyway, sorry, just adding that. So coming back to this, we just go back to the our thing. So wealthy industrialists began contributing with money, and obviously during the general elections of July 32, the unemployment reached 6 million, the number I'm giving you all the time. And of course, this was a huge, immense number for Germany. And Nazis became the largest party in the Reichstag with 13 million votes. At some point, the Nazis reached, from some sources, different sources, they reached 16 million at some point, and the highest, which was unbelievably huge. So you will say that the unemployed obviously will vote with the Nazis and with the communists, obviously, because they were unhappy with the government. And so normally when you become the largest party in the Reichstag with 13 million votes, the leader of that party was expected to become a chancellor, to be named as a chancellor. But President Hindenburg had a very strong opinion against Hitler. He was called, he was described by Hindenburg as the vulgar little corporal, which is very politically incorrect, because he attacked Hitler because he looked in that way. He was quite small, short, okay? So he was not a imposing figure, a strong Aryan individual, okay? And so he attacked his physical appearance, which is not a cool thing to do. And he attacked him for having the vulgar ideas, which is really making him kind of stupid and kind of a peasant, okay? So with a little bit offensive in that respect, Hindenburg. Anyway, instead, Franz von Papen from the Center Party was invited to form a government. I told you about this story. Without Nazi cooperation, von Papen was unable to conduct this coalition. And a second general election was held in November. And these are the two people, von Papen and von Schleicher. If you look at this, Hitler was on his prime at that point. Also, he was much younger than these people. Von Papen was really old. Schleicher, not very young also. Hitler was the youngest of all, and quite aggressive and quite proactive. So he was a kind of preferred politicians from, if you look into the German electoral position. So they voted for Hitler. He had charisma. These guys, they didn't. One was general, one was just a politician. So they didn't have that spark to actually get these people on board, the German people. And the last slide, and then I'm going to finish and we'll start again tomorrow. The Nazis lost 2 million votes. This was that big problem for Hitler, and he said, "Oh, we have a problem. We have to act fast, quickly, because we don't want to lose what we just gained." They lost 2 million votes and 34 seats. They still remained the largest party, but von Papen couldn't form the government, and von Schleicher, former general, tried to form the next government. Now, this is exactly what I told you in the beginning or halfway through the lesson, that short story about how things had happened, but I need to put it on paper for you too. Towards the end of January, von Papen, who was von Schleicher's rival, persuaded Hindenburg to appoint Hitler as Chancellor and himself as Vice Chancellor. Hitler was to be offered 3 positions in a total of 12 ministers, which is not too much for the party who's in power. Von Schleicher, his other name was Kurt von Schleicher, and Franz von Papen. Von is a very used part of a name in German. It's more like Mac in Scotland. That's about it, boys.